Croc and Peacock at 49ers training camp this weekend. Peacock showing up, and we've got notes. What did we notice over the course of 3 days at 49ers training camp? Stars on offense, stars on defense, and what's going on with Trey Lance in the quarterback position? Coming up on today's episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks for making Locked On 49ers your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Croc, overall vibe. I loved seeing all the folks out there that recognized us, said hi to us. Shout out to everybody that was at 49ers training camp. It was a lot of fun. It was a really good vibe in the crowd. I thought a really good vibe by the team on the field. We're going to start with the quarterback because that's what the most important aspect of this whole season, I think, is. But the one thing about the quarterback position that made it weird was seeing Jimmy G just stroll out there. And I've never seen anything like it. It was really awkward. And I knew he was going to be there, but it was weird seeing Jimmy G by himself throwing passes to, a coach or, some ball boys where there's like, I've never seen so many ball boys in my life either. The 49ers are well stocked with the ball boys running routes too in a couple of drills where Kyle Shanahan plays quarterback. By the way, Kyle Shanahan did throw the most interceptions of all the quarterbacks. I want to throw that out there over the course of days I was there. But Jimmy Garoppolo is just such a weird vibe seeing him throw by himself. And then Ian Rappaport saying today that it's likely that he gets released around final cuts time, which is basically that's the final point he could get cut. So that way his money's not guaranteed.
Yeah. And I mean, just watching Jimmy Garoppolo look like Jimmy G, right? Just throwing the ball, quick throw motion. My guy, Greg Pinelli, does have a little nugget though. And he believes that Jimmy Garoppolo's throwing motion is actually longer than it previously was, and that it should generate a little bit more power behind his throws and a little bit more velocity. And he talked about how what was that movie where the kid broke his arm and then he ended up being a
Rookie of the year?
Player? Yeah, he said it could be like something
Henry
like that,
Gardner.
where messing up his shoulder kind of could change a little bit of his mechanics, but actually make his arm a little bit stronger.
Yeah, that's not unheard of that guys come back from arm injuries like that and they come back a little bit stronger just because their arm is in better shape than it was before and all the rehab they go through and they strengthen everything around it. And I don't know, is it elongated, I wonder, because he's just trying to work it out, or is it because that's his new throwing motion? I
don't know. And I have to go back and watch him throw before. Everybody knows that Jimmy Garoppolo has one of the quickest releases in the NFL. I now notice after Greg said that he is bringing the ball back here and even kind of low as well. Not as low as like Trey Lance, but not too much higher. And I'm not sure if that was something I noticed before. So I have to go back and watch Jimmy Garoppolo throw some footballs. I thought he kept it up here more as opposed to back here and lower.
I felt that way too. And who knows, maybe it's just a deliberate delivery as part of his rehab and ramp up process. But really the quarterback we need to talk about, Croc, is Trey Lance. Right. And it was a roller coaster. I was there for 2 days. You were there for 2 days. We were there both on Saturday. You were there Friday, Saturday. I was there Saturday, Sunday. And it was a roller coaster ride. At times he looked great, depending on the drill. At times he looked bad. Sometimes you look good and bad in the same drill. And missed a lot of throws and made a lot of plays as well. So what were your thoughts overall watching Trey Lance at training camp this year?
Yeah, my main takeaway was that the accuracy was definitely hit and miss. And I figured something early on, and I talked about it, how, I think Trey Lance might be somebody, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my cat making a cameo here. But it reminded me of something I said a while back. And I said, there's a chance, and you might remember me saying this, that Nate Sudfeld just in certain drills can just look better as a passer, right? Like when he's just forced to throw, there's a chance Nate Sudfeld can look just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more poised in the pocket. And for the most part, I thought that was fairly true. Now, again, one guy's going against first group for the, majority of practice. The other guy's going against second group. And even when guys like Nick Bosa and Ken Law and Armstead aren't out there, you still have Trey Lance kind of going against the better defensive line. But anyways, regardless of that, I just thought he's going to have to lean on being more of a playmaker as opposed to somebody that's just going to be this pinpoint pocket passer and throw the ball, all over the place. So what is the give and take with having a guy like Trey Lance? I did see some really good things with him making plays on the moves, using his legs. And I think just until he gets more comfortable just with the bodies around him, throwing the ball and continuing to kind of be accurate from that way, he's going to have to lean on being a little bit more of a playmaker. Which, again, I watched Patrick Mahomes be more of a quote-unquote playmaker to the tune of an MVP in his second year. Like, but Mahomes was not a guy who was just dropping back and, I'm just going to go through all my reads and then deliver the ball. It was, I'm going to drop back, I'm looking at my first read. If that's not there, I'm on the move. And I think you might see a little bit more of that for Trey Lance as opposed and probably for the next year or so. And then down the line, you should see him be more comfortable and continue to improve on the accuracy and just being a pure quarterback.
Yeah, and I certainly saw that as well. Much more comfortable on the second reaction plays when he's creating a little bit, giving him some time, can make a bigger play out of it, can create with his feet. I thought he looked the best, and I think my favorite drill of the weekend that I saw was when they had that 2-minute drill or a 1 minute 15-second drill at the end of practice Saturday, and driving the team down the field against the 49ers defense, and they put in the end zone. They put in the end zone with 0 seconds left on the clock. Maybe wasted a little bit of time on a play. We can't get too deep in the weeds on this episode of the details of that, but he made a bunch. He kept the chains alive with his legs on a couple of plays, and I think that's important. And that's the total, because when you just see Trey in a drill and evading the rush and maybe getting out on the move isn't part of the drill, you're not getting the entire package of what Trey Lance could be. So creating is going to be a big part of Trey Lance, and I think he's going to have to work on the timing aspect, and that's when I would say timing and then just pure accuracy, because he's still missing high a lot.
Right, and even in that drill, right, you talked about the 2-minute drill, and I think that's more what we'll see for the most part from Trey Lance. Like if you say like the total kind of package of what he brings right now, I think that drill really showed it. Right now, obviously he was much more efficient, and you would like him to lean more towards being that on a consistent basis. He made the throws all levels. He hit George Kittle. He hit Deebo Samuel. But he also missed one high, right, in the flats, throwing to, I believe it was Jermichael Hasty, and it kind of went off Hasty's hands. It was definitely a higher pass, but then he came back, and the touchdown that he threw from 15 yards out moved to the left, went back, flipped, and made a throw into the end zone for a touchdown. So, I'd assume that we'd see a little bit more so of that than somebody that just continues time after time to stay in the pocket like we might see from a Jimmy Garoppolo or even a Nate Sudfeld.
Yep, absolutely. Sunday, he missed a couple of balls, a couple of corner routes high and away, and it's where you want to miss. There was a shot at Deebo down the left sideline, a corner route, and the window was closing fast. So if he tries to put it on his body, maybe that's an interception. So it was a good miss, and if that was like the only miss, it'd be like, okay, but he's consistently missing high and away on a lot of those types of throws. So he's definitely gonna have to dial in some of that stuff. But it's funny because he started out hot. It's like, okay, Trey Lance looking good Sunday. Started out hot. 3 of 3 in those 11-on-11 drills. 3 of 3. So he's 100% looking good. And then I think he completed 1 or 2 more passes the rest of practice. He ended up being 4 or 5 of 12. I've seen some people say it was 4 or 12. I wasn't really keeping stats because it's not my thing. Jordan, shout out to Jordan Elliott, who's standing next to me, and he had him at 5 of 12, I believe, something like that. So, with the interception to Fred Warner, it's not as efficient as you want it to be in practice, but the 49ers defense is really good too. So that's why these preseason games are going to be important. Let's see what this looks like against other teams when sacks are actually sacks. And there's a lot of plays that you see at training camp too, where the crowd's cheering and a running back's ripping off a run, but he's kind of really been tackled 3 times, but they're kind of letting him through, and the running back's just going through the motions, and people getting their hands on him. And there's a lot of plays where a quarterback maybe gets sacked and continues to play, makes a throw, it looks like a big gain down the field, but it actually would have been a sack. And so we get to see it actually play out in real time, where sacks are sacks, tackles are tackles, and we will see Trey and everybody else on offense go against the defense. It's not the 49ers, because the 49ers defense was clearly winning a lot this weekend, as they have been throughout training camp.
Yeah, no, definitely. Defense was flying around, and I can't wait to get into them a little bit later. But they definitely made life difficult. And, my biggest bone that I have to pick is even more so than anything else, the receivers. In one-on-ones, I felt like consistently they really struggled to create any type of separation from the cornerbacks. And one-on-one, that's a drill. I mean, dude, that's for the offense. And they tell you, like, the receivers should win 90% of the time. And even when they did win, for the most part, there were corners draped and defensive backs just draped all over the receivers. And I'm like, dude, these guys got to create more separation than that. You got to be able to win your one-on-one battles. Brandon Ayuk, he, for the most part, had no issues. I'd say he won 90% of the reps, as you would hope, and he did it typically with convincing fashion. But outside of him, a lot of the other guys, they were definitely hit and miss. And, they can definitely pull a clip of a guy maybe making a catch, or Danny Gray running downfield and making a catch, but that was not what was consistent throughout the one-on-one. So the receivers, we're talking about a young quarterback, and that's another thing too, real quick. I mean, I'd assume when you have a young quarterback like him, and it's like, okay, I could be a little spotty here or miss here. Well, in games, and you won't see this in one-on-ones, but I could throw a screen to Deebo Samuel, and that's going to kind of, get me in the groove. Play action on the move, throw a little drag routes to Deebo Samuel. These little things that will really help kind of get your young guy in the rhythm. But yeah, the one-on-ones, it wasn't really Deebo's forte from what I watched, or anyone else's outside of Brandon Ayuk.
And that's another thing to remember. Not only is the defense good and maybe better than the offense in a lot of ways, especially up front, and the cover guys against a lot of the wide receivers on the 49ers, but they're also, like, Kyle Shanahan's not scheming up to beat the defense necessarily. They're working
right.
they're working on plays. He's not trying to just scheme up and beat that defense. So that's another thing to remember as well. That could look different when the live bullets really start flying in the regular season. Next, let's talk about what stood out to us the most, the standout players on the offensive side of the ball. Then we'll get to the defensive side of the ball as well. And there were some surprising players, I think, to me in training camp, once I got to put my eyes on some of these guys at 49ers camp. But we got to let the folks out there know first about Dave. Maybe, and Croc, I know you've been through this. There were times where, man, you need to get a little extra cash to buy some new equipment for that side hustle, right? And hindsight is 2020, and you can't change the past, but what if you could get a little help from your future self? Maybe you'd ask to borrow some cash, and now you can with Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to get that gear for whatever your side hustle is. Maybe you need that microphone to get your podcast working so you can make even more money, right? You need to outfit your gym with some new equipment. Maybe you need some new little ladders for your footwork drill that you were eyeballing at training camp. You say, hey, I like that thing that 49ers got there. I need to put that in my gym, right, Croc? Catch up on the bills, whatever. Tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch, need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's Dave, D-A-V-E. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. For your second listen, make sure you check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, as well as the Locked On NFL Draft podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You mentioned it just a second ago, Croc, and Ayuk, was he your number one standout player because of all the receivers? He's making most of the plays, even more so than Deebo. He's getting open the most, and he's really been the standout on the offensive side of the ball at camp.
Definitely was. Definitely was. And he's making plays all over the field. And I will say, I talked about Deebo Samuel not really winning in one-on-ones and how he's going to be utilized. Deebo made more plays than I think people kind of, I don't say realize, because they weren't like splashy. But Deebo did, he made catches. It just wasn't to the tune of what you saw from Brandon Ayuk. And the way I kind of look at it is, if I had my wife there with me, who was not there with me in California, but if I had my wife there and I said, babe, who's the best player out here on the field? She said, oh, number 11, right? And I think that was the kind of the consensus with anyone you asked, including players. Coach Kyle Shanahan talked about how well IU looks right now in practice, but it was very clear. It was really more of a dominant performance from him each of the days that I was there.
Yeah, on Sunday they didn't do one-on-ones. They just went. It was a little bit of shorter practice on Dwight Clark Day, and they kind of went in straight into 11-on-11s. He did have a drop from Trey Lance on, I think it was a little out route on Sunday, but overall he just made more plays than everybody else, and especially on downfield throws, the intermediate to deep balls. Debo and Trey Lance just don't seem to be connecting on those, and for whatever reason they've worked together a lot more. And it's probably why is worked together all off season on some of that. So maybe it's just a timing thing. And you would hope that Ayuk with his athleticism and his, long arms and things like that, he would be better at getting some of those downfield throws. And the other thing you mentioned about Devo too, on the short stuff, he's not like, I think he's still working into shape a little bit because he's not like bursting after he gets the ball and like trying to make a bunch of extra plays and running through tackles, and they're not really hitting right now, even though they got pads on too. So you can't really get the full scope of what Debo's doing until we really see him in action, and we might not see him in a preseason game either. So we might have to wait until week 1 in September to see Debo being Debo.
The drops were something that was a little concerning, but again, you have to use the context of, well, who's really going to be out there. Well, Juwan Jennings dropped a few passes, not ideal because as it stands, I'd assume he's your wide receiver 3 or you're a slot guy. But I don't know. Ray McCloud, he's kind of coming on strong.
From the 2 days I was at practice, Ray McCloud wasn't even close. There was a massive gap after it's Ayuk and Debo are the starters. It's Ray McCloud is the number 3, and then there was a big gap. Juwan Jennings didn't do anything, and Ray McCloud was making plays down the field. He caught that touchdown pass in the 2-minute drill for the touchdown at the end of the Saturday practice. He made a big play in traffic he beat Kadar Holman down the right sideline and caught it with I think it was Odom was the safety coming over the top. Great throw by Lance. It was probably the best play I saw of the entire weekend that I was there. I just want to get this right here. It was it was from Sudfeld that threw this ball. It was down the right sideline. It was a pretty ball from Sudfeld, so nice throw there. All the quarterbacks threw an interception today at practice to linebackers. But a great job by McCloud making the catch, acrobatic catch between Holman and Odom, and I think that was the play of the day on Sunday.
He's coming on strong.
Yeah.
But that was kind of surprising for you to hear, oh, Ayuk had a drop, right? Because he's just been so dominating throughout the practices. But you talked about Trey Lance and some of his numbers, and you look at it, it's like, okay, well, some people have him 5 or 12, and I feel like when he is like 5 or 12, there's like 2-3 drops in there as well. That's hard to kind of account for, and I thought that was consistent each day. Where especially one day I was there, I want to say, so the day you weren't there, so that had to be Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Where I had him like 8 of 12, and it was 8 of 12 with like 2 drops. Or flat out drops where he just hit a guy right in the number and he just dropped the ball. So that's something that they have to kind of look to clean up and get a little bit more consistent with. Like, dude, just catch the ball, because it seems to be something that's happening every day. And I would say, like, if he's throwing it like these laser beaming passes and it's just really hard to catch that, I would get it. I didn't feel like he was just throwing the ball as hard as he could, right? We saw some of that last season.
Actually, I was he was throwing some touch at times. I think there's something with the ball flight where it gets a little like the nose is kind of up in the air instead of the nose coming back down, and a little fluttery. There's some wobble there to it. There's some passes that wobble a lot. So there's definitely something there. He's got to get more consistent just with his ball flight. And that might be a big part of why everything's missing high. The nose is getting up and it's just floating on him a little bit, a little wobbly. I think he could dial that in, because you really see it when Sudfeld, who throws a really tight spiral. When they go back to back, it's really obvious how much tighter Sudfeld's ball is than Trey Lance's. So that's certainly
it has anything to do with, because he talked about having to like learn it.
Yeah,
a grip. So this was something that I hadn't heard anyone talk about, and I don't even know the context of why he brought it up. But I guess when he broke his finger,
it was on. I think it was with Papa and Lund at KMBR were
Oh,
at
okay, yeah.
practice and interviewing guys.
So
Next
when he
field.
broke his finger, he had to grip the ball a different way, and that was early in the year. I mean, he did that in preseason. So he had to learn to grip the ball a different way so he could throw a football, with the pain of the finger or whatever, or try to take some of that pressure off of the finger. Well, it kind of created this bad habit for him of throwing a football a certain way. And they've been trying to kind of rework that and get that out. But sometimes he just kind of goes back to it because he spent all last year throwing the ball that way to kind of protect his finger. And I wonder if that kind of hurts him with some of the wobble because when I watched him in college, he wasn't a wobble ball thrower. You watch his pro day, there ain't no wobble to any of those passes. And I'd even say, last preseason, I remember seeing the wobble. It wasn't until like he started playing, and I remember even versus the Texans, that was when Greg Pinelli was like, yeah, the ball's kind of coming out of his hand a little funny. And now we find out there was an injury, but now it's kind of being consistent with a little bit more wobble on his passes.
I will say one thing, and something that you brought up, that you had heard that he was mostly working at 3D QB on his lower half and his
Yeah.
footwork and not his delivery. His footwork is really nice. You can tell he's put some work in there. And I know Kyle Shanahan, like, really, really it pounds that home with quarterbacks and their footwork. So I think that's one thing that you have seen a huge improvement on with Trey Lance. His footwork was looking nice, and he's pretty calm in there, even though, and that's another part of this is tough too, because I think timing is the thing that, timing and accuracy are the two things that I'd be worried about that they need to work on with Trey Lance. But the timing is hard if your offensive line is getting beat often. That's going to throw off your timing every time, so then you're rolling out and then it changes what the play is.
Well, I like that you brought up the feet because when I talk about, and we just turned this totally back into a Trey Lance thing,
That's
but when you talk about like, oh man, really like his feet, he cleaned that up. They worked on that. I always talk about progression and what does that look like for guys. So if you told me, hey, year 2 offseason, they really worked on his feet and they wanted to really improve on that and they drove that home and his footwork got better, right? And then year 3 is like, all right, heading into year 3, we worked on the feet. The feet are terrific. Now, year 3, we work on these other things so he can progress in that aspect of his game. And once you start putting those things together, you should see even a better product on the field. But that's just part of the development process of him seeing things, getting comfortable with those things, and continue to work at different aspects that's going to make him more comfortable. And I know a lot of fans aren't going to be patient for that, but those are the type of things that you're looking forward to seeing down the line. Listen, I mean, I talk about Dak Prescott, and I talked about people, everybody throws out Josh Allen, right, and his progression and what that looked like and becoming more accurate. He was not accurate at all the first couple years in the NFL, but he continued to improve. He got better. Well, Dak Prescott, I think it's kind of overshadowed because he came in and did so well as a rookie, but it wasn't great after that. I mean, they went 8-8 his second year. He missed a lot of stuff. He barely threw for 200 yards. I mean, it was like, I believe, if I remember correctly, out of 16 games, he threw for over 200 yards like 7 times or something like that. Like, it wasn't good at all. And you look at that version of Dak Prescott where he was one-hopping guys on dig routes and things like that. I remember seeing that and telling my brother, like, man, y'all quarterback sucks. Like, dude can't even throw a football, right? He goes from that to this guy where week 1 last year, he throws the ball 60 times, coming off of that, even having that shoulder soreness or whatever. Throws the ball 60 times. And he's a guy that you can literally count on to just throw the ball, and you're going to try to win that way. Like, and he can do it. Not saying you want to make a living off of it, but he is a much improved passer. And again, that goes to just developing along the way. And what does it look like? I mean, it took him 3-4 years to get to that point.
Yeah, it's a long process. This is year 2. Year number 1 as a starter of hopefully 15 years. Like there's going to be a progression here, and the things he's worked on, he's gotten better at in the offseason. So we'll see what that starts to look like against other defenses, which will be huge. That's why I'm so excited about these preseason games coming up and the joint practices with the Vikings that will be must see and must follow. Next, we got to talk about actually, I still have a standout on the offensive side of the ball, and then we'll talk about our standouts we saw on the defensive side of the ball at 49ers camp next. After we talk about Bet Online, betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. How about these lines for starting quarterbacks in week 1 of 2022 at Bet Online? You can bet on whether it's going to be Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, and I don't think the Steelers, from all reports, everything's been awful there. I mean, they've got they're not even mentioned here is Rudolph has been taken, might beat out Trubisky, and I don't think they want the rookie to win the job in Pittsburgh, so that's just an ugly one. Geno Smith or Drew Lock in Seattle. Geno Smith is the favorite, as is Mitch Trubisky in Pittsburgh. How about the Panthers, who supposedly have a competition? I don't know if it is. Baker Mayfield is definitely the big time favorite in that one. And then there's Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder for the Falcons, who will be the starting quarterback in week 1. And might Jimmy Garoppolo be the starting quarterback for one of those teams after he is released? Who knows? But you can find those kinds of lines and tons of other stuff at Bet Online, including Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, golf, live in-game betting, tons of news as well, not just wagering at Bet Online. So get over to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening now at Bet Online, where the game starts. So I mentioned Ray McCloud. I think that was one of my standouts. But how about this standout? Number 62 on the second team offensive line, Jason Poe, playing right guard. I don't think he's lost a rep either of the days that I was watching Jason Poe at practice. The kid's looking good, and he's short, but it hasn't impacted his play at all. Like, I don't care how tall he is. He wins the leverage battle every time. He doesn't get beat. He looks like he belongs. I think he's somebody that might have to make the 53-man roster, or you would risk losing him to waivers. So I want to shout out Jason Poe. He had a really nice couple of days when I was there, and a lot of the things I saw in person was some of the things that people were saying. A lot of people said they were impressed with Poe. That everyone was saying that Ayuk's been great, and Croc, you said during one-on-ones on Friday, like, Ayuk was whipping everybody and nobody else was winning reps on offense, right? And so the things that we've heard through camp have been pretty accurate when I actually got to lay my eyes on some of these guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was one of my bigger takeaways too. Some of the guys you expected to do well or struggle or be inconsistent, you got this chance to see that and try to figure out, okay, how do you work around it? And that's what Kyle Shanahan's going to have to really dial in on. Like, okay, here's where we are. Here are our strengths. Here are our weaknesses. How do we get consistent with a lot of what our strengths are? I think it's going to definitely help having a defense that the 49ers have, because this team, I mean, when you just watch them, they are flying around. And everybody was saying that, man, the defense looks great. Defense looks great, right? And you talk about the quarterbacks. You said they all threw interceptions today, or Sunday. And when you see how fast this defense plays, it's kind of easy to see why they can really get after quarterbacks and kind of make you panic a little bit. Maybe throw the ball a little bit before you want to. And, you know, how that can really kind of mess some things up at times. But I was really happy with what I saw from the defense. I was really happy with the ability of Emmanuel Mosley to run vertically down the field with the receivers. No issues at all. So those were things that I was definitely excited about, especially the guys on the outside. They challenge guys. Travarius Ward, he got beat at times, but when he gets beat or gives up a catch, he's typically right there to challenge the receiver. So he made some plays, he gave up some plays, but between him and Mosley, they are consistently challenging guys.
McCrary Ball had an interception, and he's another player that I think some people have been hyping up. He's wearing number 40. He looks like a safety. He's wearing a safety number. He's a very small linebacker. I don't know if he's got a chance to make the team, but he's playing pretty well. But the 49ers have just a stocked linebacker room. He had an interception that I believe was tipped by Ty Davis-Price. I wasn't impressed with Ty Davis-Price Sunday, but apparently, Croc, when you showed up Friday, he had a pretty good day, right?
Friday and Saturday, he had good days. And there were guys that were telling me, like, oh, man, haven't seen it. Hasn't been good. The vision lacks. Now, they were kind of bringing up, I feel like they were bringing up, the same two plays. And it's like, oh, this is why he wasn't good. But again, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I'd say he ran extremely well Friday. I thought he ran very well Saturday, too, ripping off a few big runs. for a guy that is a bigger back, and I don't know how much he weighs right now, but he's a very fluid runner. I feel like he was light on his feet, and when he needed to kind of accelerate and lower the boom on guys, he definitely did that. There's a lot of Kevin Barlow to his game, and obviously, they wear the same number as well, so you can see some of that. But I thought he ran well in those 2 days. The tough thing is when you're playing, behind an offensive line that is trying to figure it out, him going with the second group, you don't have these big gaping running holes, right? Watching Elijah Mitchell on Friday, oh man, I feel like he was ripping off big run after big run. Well, they were gaping holes, right? It was like that outside zone. He sees this big hole. He puts his foot in the ground. He gets upfield, and it's like, dang, they're untouched. Maybe he might have one guy to make miss. Well, Tyler Davis Price, if you're running behind a second group and they're trying to figure it out and you're getting stuffed by this fast defense, where everybody's going to say, oh, Tyler Davis Price, like, oh, man, terrible, not looking good. But really, it's like, well, I would look good if I had Elijah Mitchell's run blocking consistently. So there's that aspect of it too. But just in the sense of what he looks like, I think he looks like a legit, like, thunder and lightning type back to complement what Elijah Mitchell does.
Of course, Fred Warner looking like Fred Warner and just the captain of everything out there, signing autographs with the people after practice. Loved everything I saw from Fred Warner. All the linebackers flying around, Demetrius Flanagan-Foles making some plays, the McCrary ball interception. It was really nice to see because there's been a lot of talk about Kinlaw, right? And seeing how good a shape he was in, but he's been held out a lot. Seeing him fully participating in practice and getting involved and making some plays on Sunday was cool. And I don't know if it was necessarily even plays, but there was one play where he's wrecked the entire play. And essentially it would have been a sack, I think, on Trey Lance, and it ruined the play. And he blew through Aaron Banks, and maybe it would have been maybe it's a little Brunskill as well. Brunskill and Brendel were trading off with the first team. It was Brunskill in on that play with Kinlaw just busting through the line, just a power move, explosive right off the line, right through there. And I don't know if it was the gap between Brunskill and Banks or if it was straight through Banks, but that was a game wrecking play and definitely a flash play. And I didn't see a lot of other flashes from Kinlaw, but it was good to see him healthy and on the field. But we need to see more consistency from Kinlaw, not just the flash plays, because he's been the flash player all along. Can we get the consistency from him? And I mean, he's in great shape, and if he's healthy, this is a big year for him.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is the safety position, and for the most part, Hufanga was the guy lining up with the ones. Well, I guess the day you were there with me, so that would be Saturday morning.
Saturday, yeah.
It was Tarvarius Moore.
Yeah. Tarvarius Moore was with the ones Saturday, and it was back to Hufanga with the ones again Sunday.
Okay. So there's some kind of battle going on there, and they're giving Tarvarius Moore, legit opportunity. I think the interesting thing is just it wasn't Greg Odom. I keep calling him Greg Odom. George Odom. Yeah. It wasn't George Odom. So I think they view him as a safety that can fill in, but you will be a priority guy on special teams.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that George Odom is the backup safety and core special teamer. I think that's his role. And he made some plays. He made a nice little play, stuff in the run. I believe it was against, I think it was a run to Debo. And it was like they were on the far side, so I couldn't see how the play developed really well, but it was I couldn't tell if it was a motion, like an end around type of a play. But Odom was there to meet Debo, pretty close to the line of scrimmage on that one. They're so different, Tarvarius Moore and Hufanga, and neither one of them made a ton of plays. So I didn't feel like, at least the 2 days I was there, that there was any edge to either guy. It was just because you can just tell they're so different. So I think that's ongoing. I think that's going to have to play out in the games too. Anybody else on defense, Croc, before we go, that you want to shout out from your couple of days at training camp practice?
By
the way, Nick Bosa. I want to say Nick Bosa really quick. It's been out for a few days now, and that's there's been no reports of any injuries. And I don't know why he's been out, but like on Sunday there was no McGlinchey, no Trent Williams, no Bosa. George Kittle didn't practice either on Sunday, although he was heavily involved on Saturday. They've been throwing a lot of more deep balls to the tight ends. They had him going on corner routes. So I think that's there's going to be more downfield throws this year, clearly, and that's
Right.
to everybody, not just the wide receivers.
Right. George Kittle running a slot fade
Yep.
down the field.
Yep. Well, who were you saying on defense?
Drake
Oh,
Jackson. I thought he showed up. I thought he looked good.
Drake Jackson in the one-on-ones or in team stuff?
Team stuff.
Yeah. He didn't pop for me. I think Trey made a play. Yeah, he didn't jump out to me at all in practice on Sunday. In fact, I didn't have him in my notes at all. I got a ton of notes here. There's a ton of stuff we can continue to get to throughout the week. If you have any questions on practice, or if you saw us out there, let us know on Twitter at BDPeacock, at Eric_Crocker, or in the comments on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Croc and I will have more on training camp, all the latest with the San Francisco 49ers tomorrow, another Winky Wednesday. And we're getting close to 49ers football, Croc. A little bit of preseason ball to end the week. And we'll have you covered there. Croc and I back tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.